A reading from the first letter of St. Paul to Corinthians chapter 1. Brothers and sisters, Christ did not send me to baptize, but to proclaim the gospel, and not with eloquent wisdom, so that the cross of Christ might not be emptied of its power. For the message about the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the discernment of the discerning I will thwart. Where is the one who is wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the debater of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since in the wisdom of God, the world did not know God through wisdom, God decided, through the foolishness of our proclamation, to save those who believe. For Jews demand signs, and Greeks desire wisdom, but we proclaim Christ crucified, a stumbling block to Jews and foolishness to Gentiles. But to those who are the called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ the power of God and the wisdom of God. For God's foolishness is wiser than human wisdom, and God's weakness is stronger than human strength. We heard a well-known passage from the first letter to the Corinthians. Many would remember the last sentence of the passage. St. Paul writes, For God's foolishness is wiser than human wisdom, and God's weakness is stronger than human strength. Many commentators point out the eventual success of the apostles whose human wisdom, knowledge, and eloquence were poor and weak. But St. Paul was already sure of the power of God that would work through his weakness and poverty, because he had witnessed the power of God in crucified Christ. What was the power of Christ crucified? It was a defeat. It was a shameful failure. There was no glorious triumph. It was a terrible death. However, this Christ crucified has risen from death. St. Paul and the other apostles saw Christ's death and resurrection. They didn't have to rely on eloquence. They didn't have to persuade with arguments. They were the witnesses of the crucified Christ, who has now risen. That's what they did. They proclaimed Christ crucified. The apostles didn't have to worry about expanding the church, because they knew it was Jesus who was calling people to himself, both Jews and Gentiles. I wonder what it is like to become a witness of Christ crucified. I think Christ's witness becomes like Christ, an obedient servant carrying his cross, ridiculed and defeated, and eventually dying in weakness and poverty for faith, not a success, but a failure. A true witness is not a spokesperson. He is an example of the truth. When a true witness opens his mouth, people hear not an argument, but a calling of the truth.